The big breaking news later that America is saying goodbye to the Paris Accord, also giving investors confidence late in the session. Now, President Trump just announcing that climate bombshell, and already global elites are losing their collective minds. Although the move that reportedly divided the West Wing, the president adhering to his base and keeping a major promise. But President Trump was clear. This action wasn't about climate, and he says that he's actually open to renegotiating. Let's bring in Bjorn Lomborg, president of the Copenhagen Consensus Center, here to discuss. And Bjorn, you're one of the world's foremost experts on climate. You believe in global warming, you believe in man-made global warming, and yet you say that this decision offers an opportunity in disguise. What does that mean?
Well, fundamentally, Charles, the Paris Agreement was an incredibly expensive way to do almost no good for climate. And so this is really an opportunity to say, let's stop wasting a lot of money doing no good and spend less money much more smartly to fix this problem, and then have a lot of other money left over to actually do all the other things we need to focus on.
So, Bjorn, why is it that President Trump is the only world leader? I mean, they're coming at him crazy in the last hour. Everyone's piling on. How come he was the only one that realized that perhaps this could be a $14, $15 trillion boondoggle?
Well, I think a lot of leaders like to pretend that we're saving the planet. That's a good line to do. And, of course, the payment happens much later when everybody has to pay a lot higher cost for their electricity and their other energy. But the reality is, if you actually want to help, you've got to do something else in Paris. Just to give you a sense, you know, everybody's talking about how amazing Paris would have been if Trump had stayed in. But the reality is, even by the UN's own estimate, Paris would have gotten us less than 1% of what the Paris Agreement actually promised. So it would have cost $1 to $2 trillion a year and delivered almost no benefits even in 100 years. So, I mean, it's not rocket science, but it's just so hard to give up that sense of, oh, I'm saving the planet.
So where do we go from here? President Trump saying, to your point, this deal was really just a poorly crafted deal, not necessarily about climate, certainly extraordinarily expensive to Americans, American growth. Is there a way to keep the President Trump's agenda, America first, revitalizing manufacturing jobs, and also try to do things to curb even more pollution in the atmosphere?
Oh, I think there is. And the simple answer is, as long as fossil fuels are much cheaper than green energy, you're not going to get most people to switch. And that's, of course, why Trump is also saying, let's do the cheap energy. But what we should be doing is invest a lot more in research and development into getting green energy to become so cheap everyone will want it. Not only will that be a business opportunity for the U.S., but it'll also fix global warming. If we make green energy so cheap because we innovate new green energy, if we make it so cheap that it's cheaper than fossil fuels, everyone will switch. So it really is a question of saying, stop Paris, but then focus on investing in research and development into green energy. And unfortunately, Trump has also cut that investment, and I think that's probably a bad investment. He should be spending money there, because that's the way to both make America great and make sure you fix climate.
All right, Bjorn, stay right there. I want to bring in Elizabeth Harrington and Steve Hilton as well. Steve, I saw a post where you talked about, in the UK, the use of American wood pellets instead of locally produced coal as being something of a waste, and another one of these misguided adventures.
Well, it's exactly right. I mean, this whole thing is just a fantasy. Bjorn's completely right that what you've seen over the last decade or so, really, is the elite just concocting these various schemes to basically do a bit of branding and PR to say, I'm a good person because I care about the future of the planet. And actually, that is completely divorced from reality. They're not even that interested in the real-world impact. And while all this has been going on, you've actually seen America's emissions falling, not through anything to do with these international conferences and summits, but through technology and the business process, for example, through fracking, which has reduced carbon emissions, just at the same time as Europe's, who are so virtuous and love Paris and all the rest of it, their emissions are going up, and Germany's are going up. So I think the real benefit of what we've seen today is to try and focus, as Bjorn just did, on the reality. What is really going to make a difference, not what is there just to do PR and branding and make people try and look good.
You know, Elizabeth, to that point, President Trump started today with some folks within the West Wing who wanted to stay with this accord. Business leaders, including those that he's gotten really close with, all coming out and saying, hey, we want you to stay in this. Tim Cook called the White House yesterday. Elon Musk apparently now out of all these different business councils. So there was enormous pressure on President Trump to stay in this. Some even saying, hey, it's non-binding, so why don't we stick around?
Right, and well, usually the left likes it when politicians stick it to big business, and that's what Trump did here. He had everybody saying that he should stay in this and see it through, but he kept his campaign promise, and that is exactly what he needed to do here. I mean, as what we've just heard, this was a boondoggle. The idea that you could change the temperature 0.2 of a degree 100 years from now while spending billions and trillions of dollars to do it. For what? It was a bad deal, and I think President Trump did a good job of articulating all these reasons why the U.S. is now getting out of it.
Bjorn, do you have any confidence in the free markets? Because Steve mentioned CO2 emissions going down, the fracking miracle. In 1990, we were 24% America, 24% of global pollution. Now we're down to 16%. Do you have any faith that with the things that you want, the alternatives that you're looking for, that they'll happen naturally? Maybe not as quickly as they would with government subsidies, but more naturally where they don't bankrupt the nation?
Well, fracking is a great example of what America has done right. But it's also important to say Mitchell, the guy who actually brought through fracking in the 1990s, he also said it was important for him to get some funding for the R&D for fracking. And so the idea is not to have a big sort of government bureaucracy that subsidizes everything, but it is to recognize that actually helping research and development so you get great breakthroughs is actually a really good investment. And what I want and what I'd love to see from President Trump is then also to say, all the other world leaders are now going to be banging on and saying we need to focus on doing Paris anyway, despite Trump. What we should be getting them to say is let's focus a lot more on the promise that Bill Gates have been focusing on, even Obama was focusing on, spend money smartly through R&D so that we can find those technologies that will actually both make us rich and cut carbon emissions.